People know what Renaissance, Beyonce's 2022 album, is all about. It has themes of house music and its Black Chicago origins. It's about taking up space and kind of reliving joy and power. It's also about exploring themes of the ballroom scene and Black queerness and allyship. It's also about how joyful and experimental Black art, especially in the 1970s and 80s, is. It's also got a bit of inspiration from artists like Donna Summer, Diana Ross, Grace Jones, etc. But for some reason, when Cowboy Carter was announced, which is Beyonce's Act 2 to Renaissance, it was announced to come with 26 tracks, and it really puzzled people. Country music, American iconography, Dolly Parton, what does it all mean? And it doesn't help that Beyonce necessarily hasn't done any big interviews talking about the album, and there's only been one released music video for Cowboy Carter, kind of adding to its mystery. But I actually really like that, and for me, I think this album is so good because it doesn't need to be talked about. You can do the research on your own. Beyonce doesn't need to tell you what the album is about. All you need to do is do your own research, which honestly is something that we lack in this kind of like very fast, instant gratification culture. We want everything to come to us easy. We want it to be enjoyable. We want it to be very simple. We don't want complex themes. But if we could unwrap what each Taylor Swift era and its symbolism can mean, I think someone owes it to Beyonce to talk about Cowboy Carter, because it is a masterpiece, and I guess that someone is me. Okay, so I'm gonna try to break down each song one by one, first with help from various analytical references and her lyrics, and then I'll provide the kind of like an overview with some commentary on the Cowboy Carter tour itself, but that will be in part 2. I also link all of my research below. I also have my tea here with me because I do have a bit of a cough, so I'm just recovering from that. Okay, let's get started. American Requiem. American Requiem. This song is about setting a tone for kind of the rest of the album. It's the first song, the first thing you hear. The undertone of instruments in the song are pretty sparse. It's got some guitars, drums, and banjos with a little bit of electric backing. And it kind of starts with this hymn, which is a reclamation of sorts. She first acknowledges all of the talking and the controversy around her name with the lyrics, "Can you hear me?" Honestly, people don't truly listen to Beyonce, and they don't truly hear Black artists in general, and this album will be all about country music, which is what she's saying. It's also going to be about the Black American South, Black art, and her identity. She is taking back her power, as people have often limited her, just as they do with so many Black creatives. Again, can you hear me? To go back to why this album was created and what this song really means, I do need to use a quote from 2016 and talk about the CMA, which is the Country Music Awards. Quote, "In 2016, Beyonce performed at the Country Music Awards with the Chicks, with her song called Daddy Issues, sparking an intense racist backlash from country music fans. Beyonce herself acknowledged that the negative reaction to her presence at the CMA Awards spurred her to develop what has been known as Cowboy Carter. Starting from her Instagram post on March 19th, 2024, it says," direct quote from her, and really the only acknowledgement of her actually speaking about this album. So it goes, "This album has been over 5 years in the making. It was born out of an experience that I had years ago where I did not feel welcome," which is the Country Music Awards. "And it was very clear that I wasn't. But because of that experience, I did a deeper dive into the history of country music and studied our rich musical narrative. It feels good to see how music can unite so many people around the world while also amplifying the voices of some people who have dedicated so much of their lives on educating on our musical history," end quote. We also have to look at what the title of American Requiem means. First off, American is spelled very differently. It's Ameriican. So there's 2 I's, which I think stands for Act 2, which is Cowboy Carter. But I think in the different spelling of this word, it also already tells us that this is a different America than we know. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines a requiem as a funeral or mass or a solemn memorial service. Though typically it's used in a religious context, it also encompasses a musical composition performed in honor of the deceased. Here, we will use it to focus on America's complex relationship with country music through a lyrical analysis of American Requiem. This can be shown in the lyrics as the song continues with a few powerful things. quote, goodbye to what has been, a pretty house that we never settled in, and, quote, them big ideas are buried here, end quote. The song is a funeral, a mass for what America was once, not what it is now, or what it means to Beyonce. Quote, she essentially asks, can you truly be country music fans without acknowledging the deeply embedded Black roots of the genre and subsequent racist exclusion, end quote. I think she's also asking audiences to understand that America, white America as they knew it, and country music as they knew it is dead. America is Black, and it's founded on Black culture. It's a eulogy and a remembrance to what America is and what America is not. It's also an American reclamation. And in order to understand this, we have to let go of the ideas that hold us down to create a new future. Out of ashes rises new ideas. I also want to note that the producers on this track are Tyler Johnson, Beyonce, John Baptiste, No ID, Kyrie Tyler, and Dixon. Okay, that's enough on American Requiem. I'm gonna move to Blackbird. Blackbird is one of my favorite songs on the album, but it's also a cover. So what's cool about the kind of transition from American Requiem to Blackbird is that each song really flows into each other, just like on Renaissance, which I love. And this song basically asked audiences to reckon with a song that they thought they knew because it is a cover, but one that actually has Black roots. So Blackbird is a cover of a Beatles song, and you know, the Beatles were pretty revolutionary in their political music, and this song is no different. I also can't help notice that this song is from kind of the Beatles, who are considered a rock and roll band, and they have been known to kind of steal and borrow from many Black and brown artists. So by Beyonce reclaiming and taking this song, it's itself a statement. I'm actually a pretty big Beatles fan, which, you know, is interesting because I'm Black, and you know, I understand the fact that they did take a lot of cultures and a lot of music, and like, you know, I'm not a big fan of John Lennon. Like there's a lot of context with the Beatles, but I think that's what I find so interesting about them. You could go on like a Beatles rabbit hole for like months and months and months and still not uncover everything. But being a big Beatles fan, I feel like people really overlook what Blackbird is about. And honestly, the band themselves have constantly stated that this song is about the civil rights movement, specifically Little Rock Nine. Paul McCartney states, I had in mind a Black woman rather than a bird. Those were the days of the civil rights movement, which all of us passionately cared about. So this was really a song from me to a Black woman experiencing these problems in the States. It was, let me encourage you to keep trying, to keep your faith. There is hope, end quote. I'm not gonna get too much into this, but I just had to make that statement that the song has always been very political and people just choose to overlook it. This song with Beyonce starts pretty simple, honestly. It just starts with Beyonce singing in the first few verses, but then Black girls who have already been in country music begin to kind of sing and settle in. These girls that sing underneath, or I don't know, like with Beyonce, are Tanner Adele, Brittany Spencer, Tiara Kennedy, and Raina Roberts. Making this claim that country music still has Black artists, and Beyonce is not nor never has been the only one, by having these girls kind of like come in and sing under her, I think is a really proud statement. Like, hey, there are Black artists here in country music. Like, it's not just me. Here are 5 other girls who have been rocking it, and they really have. Like, they've been in country music for a while, but people just actively choose to ignore them. And in a way, she's kind of just amplifying them. I also want to state just how powerful representation is when someone like a Black woman covers a song. It's a different version of itself. Melba Pattillo Bills, who was a surviving member of Little Rock Nine, states, quote, growing up, Beale said, she was rarely told to speak her mind, so she channeled her thoughts into her diary entries and songwriting. She wanted to become a singer, but Beale said her mother was not supportive. She said, my mother wouldn't let me. She said Black people cannot survive without higher education. She also said, when McCartney sings Blackbird Fly, Beale's interpreted as meaning, I see you. But when the words come from Beyonce, Beale says, and she understands it as, I've done it, you can do it too. That's all I'm gonna say about Blackbird. Let's move on to 16 Carriages. Honestly, this is one of my favorite songs of the entire album. It's an origin story of Beyonce and who she is today. She sings, quote, had to sacrifice and leave my fears behind for legacy. If it's the last thing I do, you'll remember me, end quote. Something about that is really beautiful. But I also think it's more than just that. I think I can dig a little bit more instead of just seeing it as an origin story for Beyonce, because I think that's the easy route. Beyonce has already told us in 2 of her other songs to dig deep more than just surface level, so that's what I'm gonna do. Sure, the song is about her personal life, but that seems a bit too shallow. There are a lot of theories on this song, and it was actually pretty interesting to research. So I'm gonna share my interpreted opinion of this song beyond just a Beyonce personal memoir. So according to a Reddit post, quote, 16 Carriages is a rebirth of Junior Parker's Mystery Train, where he references a train with 16 couches long taking his baby away, and he is waiting for it to return. Train I ride, 16 coaches long. The original version is more blues than country in my opinion, and it has been remade by several other artists. Again, I think, like I said, Beyonce is taking something from a song that was kind of erased. So just for a quick second, I feel like I have to highlight who Junior Parker is and what is the Mystery Train. So Junior Parker was an American blues singer and harmonica player born in Mississippi. What's interesting is although he was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame in 2001, when you research him, there's very little that comes up at first glance. What does come up though is how his song Mystery and Train influenced Elvis Presley. Parker's original is indeed a mysterious song. The track's shuffles rhythm lets Parker emulate train whistles on his harmonica before he begins to bemoan that the 16 carriages that have taken his baby away. But he never describes the train beyond its length or why/where it's taking his lover. His expressive harmonica, aided by Phillips's reverb-heavy production, adds kind of an eerie atmosphere. Elvis was then a big fan of the song and re-recorded it with Phillips. And this one was often and had been done by many white artists, and he would continue to sing it until his death. Other artists would as well, but unfortunately Junior Parker never got the credit he was due for a song that he created. Mystery Train actually does sound a little like 16 Carriages, just slowed down and a bit more jumbled. It's kind of got this like modern twist or take on it. I could really see Beyonce using this as a symbol for her own life. Fame comes at a price. You sacrifice yourself for your art, and you sacrifice yourself for fame to make a name. Yet time doesn't slow down, and as a Black woman, she's really reflecting on all that the train brings. I mean, look at all the criticism that Beyonce gets on a daily. She can't sing, she can't do this, she can't do that. She makes one mistake and people do, 17 think articles about how horrible of a person she is. Versus like other white artists are able to get away with some heinous things. I mean, look at Morgan Wallen. But I'm digressing. Let's move on to Protector. So Protector is where we switch even more into kind of a folk and country music sound. It has banjos and more strums. The meaning of this song, I think, is once again pretty personal. It's about motherhood and being a family. We also hear children's voices in the background, specifically Rumi's voice. And we're told that this might be a lullaby. But again, with digging deeper, maybe it's also about the power of our ancestry, as well as the power and beauty of motherhood, not just for Beyonce, as well as her own mother, Miss Tina Knowles, but also about all of our ancestral mothers. Our ancestors are our protectors in every sense of the word. And they're also our projectors, giving us roadmaps to the past and the present and the future. I think our past ancestors literally gave us, quote, gave water to the soil, which is a lyric in this song. And because of that, I want to talk a little bit about sharecropping and the South. So in its definition by Google, sharecropping is an agricultural or was an agricultural system, particularly prominent in the post-Civil War South, where landowners allowed tenants to farm their land in exchange for a share of the crop. It emerged as a way to reestablish labor on farms after the abolition of slavery, offering a means of subsistence for both white and formerly enslaved Black populations. It's a big part of many Black Southern people's ancestors, like mine, and they literally gave water to the soil, like the song says, but their water gave way to the American agricultural landscape as we know it. I also want to point out, obviously, that we are not the only race to give way to ancestry in America. Many indigenous people and, of course, Mexican people and Latinx people just gave water to the soil, and it's something that often gets erased. I also want to point out that sharecropping became one of the limited options available for people of color, so it's kind of something that they were forced to do, but they were passionate about having their own land. Yet it was still like a means of survival, but it was really the only work they could do, and it was extremely hard work. Yet, again, our agricultural system and our landscape would not be where it is today without our ancestors, Black and brown people. PBS also stated that, quote, high interest rates, unpredictable harvests, and unscrupulous landlords and merchants often kept tenant farms and their families severely indebted, requiring the debt to be carried over until the next year or the next. Laws favoring landowners made it difficult or even illegal for sharecroppers to sell their crops to others besides their landlord, and they prevented sharecroppers from moving it if they were indebted to their landlord. Yet, our ancestors still believed that one day in the future, their families would be better. They sacrificed and poured into us so that we could thrive. They were our protectors, just as our own mothers often are. Okay, let's get into My Rose. This is a short, maybe 20-30-second song on the album. It feels also more like a country lullaby more than Protector. It's obviously a song that's dedicated to Sir, which is Beyonce's son, and its alternative title was Mr. Sir, so that tells you all you need to know. I really couldn't find any other interpretation besides the fact that it is Sir's song. It's still really beautiful and a great addition to the album. It doesn't have anything else besides that. Okay, so moving from My Rose, we're gonna go into Smoke Hour with Willie Nelson. Now, this is like a transition with someone talking. It's not so much like a song, but it's still really important in understanding the rest of this album and just in what Beyonce is trying to say. So when the song starts, we hear various channel changes on a few songs. I'm gonna try my best if I can to enter in what those songs are right now. I forgot to research that, so post Lene, edit that in there. I just have to say shout out to Reddit for, you know, the users on there. They are using their sleuthing skills, because if you look it up, you can't find any articles about what those songs are, and I just find that strange because it's a big part of the album. So essentially, here are the songs that are changed on the radio dial. So the first song is Laughing Yodel by Charles Anderson. The second is People Grinning in Your Face by Sunhouse. The third, this is really important, is Down by the Riverside by Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And then the fourth is Maybelline by Chuck Berry. Those last two songs are very influential in terms of rock and roll, and maybe hint to Act 3 being a rock and roll album like a lot of us think it will be. Then we hear Willie Nelson, who's a very, very beloved figure in country music. It's kind of like a radio hour where he's talking and like an announcer or a tour kind of MC introducing various acts that are about to come out. I feel like radio hour is here for a very particular reason. Willie Nelson and other announcers fulfill this role that like old radio announcers had in the early days of radio. Back then, announcers were responsible for introducing programs, reading news, making commercial announcements, and then later on the concept of disc jockeys began. So I do want to talk about that just a little bit. So the term combines disc referring to a phonograph disc record and jockey, denoting the DJ practice of riding the audio gain, or alternatively riding a song to success and popularity. So that's where disc jockey comes from, that's where DJ comes from, very important. And I also think that's an interesting tie-in to Renaissance, which is all about kind of house culture, DJs, disc jockeys. It's very important, so it's kind of like a cool tie-in, right? We're getting radio hour, which is like the beginning of radio, which was very important in how we got media. And then Renaissance goes to the power of the disc jockey in terms of making their own music. So before that, disc jockeys were just kind of playing music that they were given and giving announcements. But then in the 80s, disc jockeys really, maybe in the 70s, disc jockeys were able to create their own art, their own music, their own sound by just like taking samples and things like that. So that's really fun. So culminating in the golden age of top 40 radio from approximately 1955 to 1975, radio DJs established a style of fast talking patter to book in 3-minute pop songs. Unlike the modern club DJ who mixes transitions between songs to create a continuous flow of music, radio DJs played individual songs or music tracks while voicing announcements, introductions, comments, jokes, and commercials in between each song or series of songs. Radio announcers were extremely important in relaying things to audiences, and they did kind of control what type of music became popular. They also reflect what society is like at that time, often using specific things like the Mid-Atlantic accent, which is now an accent that no longer exists. I do also want to mention that eventually disc jockeys were black men, such as Hoppy Adams. Hairspray, the musical, is actually a little bit about this, which I think is just like such a fun tie-in if you know anything about that. I could talk so much more about this. It's wild and a rabbit hole, truly. Like if you search Hoppy Adams, that man is just a rabbit hole in itself. It just creates a lot of interesting connections. For instance, Kent was a disc jockey at WVON, then a news station in Chicago, which featured a totally African-American programming staff and leaned heavily on the music coming from young, black-owned record labels based nearly 300 miles away, which was Motown. He stated, quote, "We knew that by playing those kind of records, as in Motown records, we get people tuning into our radio station." Holiday says, quote, "That was the bottom line, to get as many listeners as you could." They, in a way, kind of gatekept what kind of music audiences listened to. And in that way, sometimes they even segregated music genres into roles. Usually in country music, these announcers often were white men like Willie Nelson. But this time, Willie Nelson is saying, Beyonce is in control. Even though I'm turning the dial, she's the subversion of your ideas. Really though, what I'm trying to get at is that radio announcers had control over what an audience heard and listened to. In this instance, Willie Nelson is playing the radio announcer. He's controlling what we can listen to. He's the one turning the dial and saying, hey, stop. I'm gonna put you onto something. Chill out. Okay, let's move on to Texas Hold'em. Obviously, again, people really take this at surface value, but you know, I wanna, like I said, dig deeper. Everything is about digging deeper. So yes, Beyonce is from Texas. She's from Houston, Texas. But in this song, she's saying, this is my world. This is in the album of Cowboy Carter is her world. This is not Texas. I make what I want. I do whatever I want to do, including making this song. But it's also about joy, expression, freedom. This is obviously a very fun song on the album. This is really an introduction of Beyonce and her country sound. It's kind of a mix of both pop and country, and she's introducing herself whether or not you like it. Almost like a spectacle that's kind of coming to a city near you. And this is reminiscent of what many black artists would do back in the day, like touring. From greats like Josephine Baker, Ma Rainey, Jimi Hendrix, Richard Pryor, and the list goes on. And again, these artists would often go to very southern conservative states that did not like black people. But it was fine because they were able to create their own worlds in the midst of the chaos that was going on outside. I want to talk a little bit about the original Chitlin Network because I think that that is kind of the introduction of this song, and it's just very important to talk about. The original Chitlin Circuit was a network of venues primarily in the often conservative South and Midwest that catered to African-American performers during the Jim Crow era. Black art is of course a spectacle for white onlookers, but it provides a glimpse into possibly black people creating this safe haven for themselves and their expression of self. Who cares about the white gaze? The white people aren't here. We're in our own venues performing to our own people. But in the midst of that, we will fool them with creating a spectacle of us coming into town and honestly creating art that white people can never try to replicate, even if they try. What's interesting about the Chitlin Circuit is that it eventually brought about the birth of rock and roll, which, you know, is another Act 3 tie-in. While its early history is relatively undocumented, it did have performers often performing to black audiences before they became big. People like James Brown, B.B. King, Little Richard, Tina Turner, and many more. They often performed in specific cities like Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, Baltimore, Maryland, Detroit, Michigan, Washington, D.C., Harlem, New York, and places like Texas, Philadelphia, and many, many more. I know people really don't understand the name, especially when Beyonce announced the tour name itself, which is the Rodeo Chitlin Tour, but everything does have a reason. So the name Chitlin Circuit derives from the word chitlins, which is and does come from a southern dish, which is pig intestines. It's kind of a controversial staple of Black foodways since the era of slavery, and it is considered a delicacy by many Black Americans. But there are a lot of kind of up in the air questions as to why people called it the chitlin circuit. There's a couple reasons. The name is due to the fact that many performance venues on the chitlin circuit served chitlins and other soul food dishes, and performers were sometimes even compensated with a meal of chitlins in lieu of cash. So that's kind of the first reason why it was called the chitlin circuit. It also might be a playful variation on this term that was called the Borscht Belt, which was a term for a circuit of clubs and theaters in the Catskills region of upstate New York, and that was kind of a popular vacation spot for Jewish families between the 1930s and 1960s. So it also maybe could have been just a play on like Borscht Belt versus chitlin circuit. There's also a very similar circuit that some people mix up with the chitlin circuit, which is called the Southern Black Gospel Circuit. This is the one that was very similar to the chitlin circuit, where basically they would go around and, you know, go to different churches and sing. So like Aretha Franklin was known to do the Southern Black Gospel Circuit. The chitlin circuit specifically came from the need to have a safe space in which Black audiences were welcomed and valued, as many venues back then were segregated for Black people. And even if Black people did perform in some of those segregated venues, it didn't mean that other Black audiences could enter. And oftentimes these segregated venues would have things like blackface, which was very common, and it was just not a welcoming environment for Black artists to really thrive. This song, This Ain't Texas, is kind of the same idea. This is creating a safe haven for Beyonce and her fans to listen to, saying, hey, this is not Texas. Sure, we may have some country music here, but this is different. This is a safe space for me to explore my artistry and not box myself in. It's about something larger. And also it's about uplifting Black art and joy. It's about setting the record straight that this isn't just Western culture. It's the culture of Black and brown people in America. And there is a difference. So that is the end of This Ain't Texas. We're gonna go into Bodyguard. I couldn't find any research on this. Truly, my theory is just that it's about Beyonce's bodyguard. It's not. It's just about people protecting you and you willing to do kind of whatever you need for them because you love them, and you're gonna be their bodyguard in life and in all aspects. It's a really great song, very upbeat, but you know, I couldn't find anything on this. We do get more of a country rock sound with this, especially with the electric guitar that's at the end and Beyonce's vocals. And again, I feel like the song also just kind of hints to Act 3 being a rock and roll album. That's literally the only thing I could find about Bodyguard. Love the song, but there's just not a lot of context here, I think. Up next we have Dolly P, which is the intro from Dolly Parton herself. It's a little lighthearted but firm. Having Dolly Parton intro and kind of be like, again, the announcer or the radio announcer or the disc jockey is a big deal, because Dolly Parton is a big deal in American music. She's in the Hall of Fame. She's made status for her fashion and her feminism. Dolly is really like a trendsetter, and I love her. But this video is about Beyonce, not Dolly Parton. In this Dolly P intro, she states, quote, "You know that hussy with the good hair you sing about? Reminded me of someone I knew back, except when she had flaming locks of auburn hair." End quote. I hope you liked my southern accent. The good hair girl that Dolly Parton is referencing refers back to Beyonce's Lemonade album, in which she states, "You better call Becky with the good hair" on Sorry. I think in a lot of ways, Jolene and Sorry are very similar at their core. These are songs that both women wrote about the pain they felt when their partner cheated on them. However, in a lot of ways, they are also different. In Jolene, Dolly Parton begs this woman to stay away from her husband. But in Sorry, Beyonce almost demands her partner to go back to the other woman and see how much he's missing out on. Regardless, both the name Jolene and Becky are regarded as some big pop culture moments because of these songs. So I think it's really interesting that Dolly references this. So by Dolly Parton, you know, coming on and introducing herself and saying like, hey, Beyonce and I are kind of similar, and you know, Beyonce's gonna sing this song that I wrote. Have fun. It's kind of saying like, I support you and I support Black artists. And this is something that Dolly Parton has actually done in her career. Like she's, you know, really supported young upcoming artists that are women and Black women. So then we transition from Dolly P to Jolene. And again, this is a cover, but honestly, Beyonce makes this her own. Again, this album is all about reclaiming music and identity, and Beyonce is reclaiming a song that Americans love, but she really makes it her own with kind of an electronic remix, drums, guitar, and a lot more riffs and improv in her vocals. While other people have covered this song before, like I love Miley Cyrus's cover of Jolene, I really think Beyonce is the first to do one that really differs from the original source material. Now, I can talk about how much I love Dolly Parton, but she is still very much a white woman at her core, and a Southern white woman at that. And I think we can not ignore that oftentimes Dolly Parton's America and her experiences and her version of womanhood is going to be different from Beyonce's and from Black women like myself, which is why Beyonce's cover of Jolene is so different. While both songs are about a man cheating, where they differ is how both women deal with it and in the rage they use. So the original Jolene is obviously a country music anthem featuring Dolly kind of gently crooning and pleading for Jolene, who's thought to be this like beautiful redheaded woman, to not take her man. It follows kind of the sad country music storytelling tradition, and it's also a song about the threat of infidelity and what's at stake. In this song, quote, the traditional Southern belle femininity adheres to strict gender roles. She is a woman who is demure, chaste, and charming. Think Scarlett O'Hara on Gone with the Wind, or even Blanche Devereaux from The Golden Girls. It's kind of this like beautiful, striking, and vulnerable song, but it is also a competition between two white and feminine women, and a conversation on desire and delicate femininity, where the man is not really the point of the song. But in Beyonce's version, the song uses different wording, or rather Beyonce chooses to use Black vernacular to convey that the narrator of the song is a Black woman, unlike Parton. Beyonce also chooses to exclude gender roles while referring to herself as a queen, and she even states that her beauty is not even in the picture. Like, it doesn't matter who's beautiful in this scenario. That's not the point. Beyonce also refers to her Southern identity and the rage in which she feels about the situation. In the song too, despite facing intense pain and infidelity, the narrator of the song, Beyonce, is not delicate. And I think that's really intentional. Oh, my camera died. So I'm now on my laptop. Unfortunately, I apologize for the quality, but it is what it is. While she's still fighting for her marriage to a man that cheated on her, she's still strong and standing firm. She's kind of almost daring Jolene to try her. Also, the way in which Beyonce chooses to carry emotion in the song is kind of louder than Parton's. Quote, where Parton piles with charm, Beyonce employs grit. End quote. In Beyonce's version, her man also becomes a central character with the choice he's made despite infidelity. Quote, I'm stand by him, he gon' stand by me. I'm a stand by her, she gon' stand by me. End quote. Which was added to the song. There are also a few other lyric additions as well, but I'm not going to get too much into them. This song is honestly more about self-identity, Beyonce's journey, and her Southern Black femininity. There is no pleading, and I really love that. I love how Beyonce changed the song. Let's move to Daughter. So Daughter is really where the album really begins to showcase some genre bending and sets the tone for the other half of the music. In a way, this album is also in 3 parts. So from American Requiem to Smoke Hour, that's the first part. From Willie Nelson to Alligator Tears, that's the second part. And then from Smoke Hour 2 until Amen, that's the third part of this album. Anyways, this song is a personal favorite, and I really feel and hear the story. If only we had the visuals. I cry. I wish we had them. But you can really hear kind of Beyonce crafting her own persona in a story, and I love that. Towards the end, Beyonce begins to sing in an Italian opera. It's called Caro Mio Ben, which kind of changes the genre of this song unexpectedly. So the Italian opera is actually an 18th century song, and it's almost like a hymn. It professes a cruel love, but again, Beyonce makes this opera her own. Why? What is she saying? Well, I think she's saying that we box Black women into categories. We box Black women into what they can and can't be based on what we are not threatened by. But Beyonce is breaking out of this concept, just like the album itself. Why not sing an Italian opera on a country album? Why not mix R&B, pop, hip hop, folk, and rock? why not? And again, this album is not just a country album, and she's not now becoming a country artist. She's many things. I don't have really a lot of research on this, but I really feel like that is what Beyonce is trying to convey. Let's move on to Spaghetti. This will be the last part, and then I will do a second video. So Spaghetti is, again, another masterpiece of a song. I know I say that about everything, but I really mean it. So we have this intro stating from Linda Martell, quote, "Genres are a funny little concept, aren't they?" And she's very important in this narrative. So I will be going a bit into her history, but I'm going to try to do that a little bit later. And then after Linda Martell goes in, it's layered with Shaboozey's rapping. Bringing Shaboozey also in is important, despite his critics and his controversy. Again, he's another Black artist that has been in country music, and that does he's kind of changing the genre in a lot of ways and doing some interesting things. Honestly, Spaghetti blows my mind. Like, Beyonce begins to rap over that, and it's my favorite, and the lines in the song are so good. And again, I think it's just another call into how, like, Beyonce will not and cannot be put into a box. It's like a callback to Daughter. But this time she's really genre bending. I think no Black artist should really be boxed in, but the music industry constantly does it. Growing up, they always tried to box Beyonce in. She's too thin, she's too thick, she's too loud, she's too country, she's not country enough, she's too Black, she's not Black enough, she doesn't write her own songs, she can't act. It's just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this song is really her saying, shut up to the public. The song is also probably titled Spaghetti because it refers to spaghetti, which is kind of like a mix match of things, right? Like, spaghetti can be Italian, but there's also Haitian spaghetti. There's also Black American spaghetti. There's Jamaican spaghetti. There's so many types of spaghetti that you can make because it's a mixture culture pot of things you can put in. It also probably refers to her use of sauce in the song, which is also a double entendre. So spaghetti is also both sauce for spaghetti, but it's also AAVE for like a term that means like confidence, bragging. It's very hard to describe, but it's two things in one. But again, it also might be a spaghetti western, which makes a lot of sense for this album. So what is a spaghetti western? A spaghetti western is a type of film or subgenre that was made in the 60s and 70s, but what was different about it is that it was often produced and directed in Italy, which is already pretty subversive considering that cowboys and western are distinctly very American. So this meant that Italians were kind of creating a film subgenre in which they kind of imagined what Western Americanography would be like. They were rarely correct on the images they produced. Like, they mainly created like white cowboys, and it was very like idealistic and just, you know, it was a time, and created some not so great tropes. But the genre itself really exploded. So to be a spaghetti western, it had to have these specific characteristics. It had to include an anti-hero with questionable and selfish morals. It had to include despicable villains that represented the worst in people. There were desert landscapes and shanty towns. Number 4, there was subversion of traditional Western tropes. And then 5, it was often commentary on politics and relations, among other things. The Westerns themselves are actually pretty good films from a cinematography aspect, and they did go on to genre blend even more legacy. Like I said, though, they do have their problems. However, again, what Beyonce is getting at is that she's going to be genre building. She's going to be expanding upon something and reclaiming what American Western and Southern culture is to her, just like spaghetti Westerns did, and just like spaghetti as a food does. Hence the genre mixing. And the other half of the album does exactly this. Again, that is where I'm going to end because the other half of the album is so complex and I'm just going to be going into depth, and I really don't want this video itself to be 3 hours long. So I hope that you enjoyed, and stay tuned for part 2. See you later.